Well, I am very excited to have another opportunity to sit down and have a great chat with my dear friend Lynn Madison out of Chicago. She is one of the preeminent instructors in the country. She is the primary author of the accredited buyer representation class. She's just a remarkable lady, and I'm grateful to call her my friend. But she and I were chatting recently, and we both realized that we had some similar experiences that were very concerning to both of us when we're teaching ABR, from some of the comments being made by students, from some of the brokers in the room. I mean, I had a guy just recently just kept saying the brokers need to be trained, the brokers need to be trained. So we decided we needed to have this conversation again and just talk through our concerns and how can we maybe contribute to fixing them. I mean, I'm not sure we have that power. Lynn, what do you think?
Yeah, well, we like to think we do maybe, but yeah, I would be inclined to agree with that. All we can do is throw it out there and hope that they take a couple of things we talk about to heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And we both have experienced situations where and I'm just going to cut to the chase. We both have experienced situations where the lack of training by the broker to their agents, and of course I think every state in the country has something called broker supervision, but the lack of instruction to their agent population has been a massive concern and has caused some genuine problems. You told me a story about a woman who closed on a transaction. Share that story.
And this happened right before Christmas of 23. Okay. She sold a property and did not realize what the offer of compensation was in the MLS till she was getting ready to fill out the paperwork for her brokerage company, and realized that the offer of compensation in the MLS was in fact zero. The seller was not offering any compensation. And I got a phone call from the managing broker who said, well, what do we do now? And I said, you close out this transaction and you're not going to get paid. I said, because you don't have a buyer representation agreement with the buyer. And I don't want to get too far off track here, but even if you did have one and you didn't tell the buyer before they bought the house that they might still owe you money, you still have a problem. Right. So topic for a different day, maybe, but the bottom line was they closed the transaction shortly after the first of the year, and a $650,000 sale, and nobody got paid anything on the buy side. And the managing broker has been kicking himself a lot, because he said, and I've had people who go, well, that was her fault. But he admitted, he said, I never thought it was going to start to happen this quickly. All of a sudden, we started seeing stuff in the MLS we had never seen before. And what was very interesting, and I think all of the managing brokers who may be listening to this will relate to this. For years, we said to our agents, we don't pay any attention to the compensation in the MLS because we got to put our clients' interests ahead of our own. And I don't show houses based on what the compensation is.
Wouldn't it be lovely if that were true across the board? Yeah. Lovely if that really was true across the board.
Yeah. And it wasn't, and we know that, but we were trying to get our agents to do the right thing. We are at a crossroads here. And my big concern is that we've got, and I know we do because I hear it almost every day, we got managing brokers who are, even in some cases, saying to their agents after the agents have gone through ABR, because they'll go back to the office that's after day one, they come back on day two, and they say to me, my managing broker said this is a bunch of hooey because this is not going to happen. May I say to all of you as a fellow managing broker, if you want to practice ostrich real estate, when your head is in the ground, you do know what part of your anatomy is sticking up in the air. I'm sorry.
That's my girl.
No, if you're going to keep saying this isn't going to happen, it is happening. And whether we like it or not, and that's the other thing, we've got to stop going around going, this is wrong. We shouldn't have lost the case in Missouri. We shouldn't have settled. The DOJ's picking on us. All right. Are you over it now?
You know,
we got to move on. We got to move on.
I have this most recent ABR I was in San Jose, and it's the second one I did for them. And I had exactly what you just described. Smart agent and I love when they sit in the front row, that tells me something, but smart agent in the front row comes to me and he says, I'm really worried. I said, why? He said, my managing broker is telling me we can still do this and we can
Yeah.
still do that and we can still
Yeah.
do this and that. And I said, no, 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 because you
Right.
can't. And
Right.
that's what I think the trigger was for this video. And I've got another video I'm
Yeah.
going to be doing that I'm actually going to send to the San Jose ed director to send to the students that were in that room that day, just because you're right. I mean, and the thing that's unfortunate, well, I'll comment here I don't like this. And why did we lose? And da da da. And I just don't want this to be real. And like you know what my response is? And this is truly what I say. I would like to be 20 pounds lighter tomorrow morning, but I ain't going to get that either.
No.
So
No.
get over it and understand the new normal is here. Business is
Yes, it
no
is.
longer as usual. And if we
That's
don't
right.
change, we will be left behind. And
Yes.
that is this is tough. That's a decision that someone's
Yeah.
making. Do you agree?
And I keep telling the agents, I also am very involved for a few of our associations here in Illinois on teaching the 45-hour post-licensing
Mm-hmm.
class.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, what I hear there would curl your hair, but that's a whole different issue. But a lot of it does pertain to this because the managing brokers are not. What they don't know, even after being in their office for 5 and 6 months, is scary to me because, so I hear it constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But I also hear them telling people to do things now, even the managing brokers who know it's changing and admit that it's changing, they're not coming sometimes to the ABR.
No,
They're not coming to the SRS class. They're
no,
telling their agents to go, but they're
right,
not coming there.
right.
So then the agents are going back. And what I tell them is be careful who you let near your mind when you go back. It's bad enough that we've got experienced long-term agents who don't want to change. But if we've got a managing broker that doesn't want to change, I'm sorry. I think you're going to lose agents over this. And that's part of my concern as well.
Yeah,
I don't want to see our business become run totally, totally by 5 or 6 big brokerage
I
companies.
agree. I agree. And
This
we
is
do.
a beautiful business for the
Absolutely.
entrepreneur. But then you
Absolutely.
got to take responsibility for what you're
Absolutely.
doing.
And
Yeah.
when we understand that, as I recall, the data point is somewhere between 60 and 65% of the brokerages in the country are small, independent, unaffiliated brokerages, or even if they're affiliated, they're still small. And what happens in those cases, and we both were management for years,
Yes.
I forever, but I was a training manager. My agents always knew what was going
So
on,
was
just
I.
like you. I mean, I'm sure of that. But when they understand that managing broker is often also the rainmaker,
Yeah.
does that not? And that's, I get it. You're running a company. You have a business to run. I get all of that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can pretend that the realities of life aren't really here. And August 17th is coming,
Yeah.
and that's when the world's going to change. And I think, Lynn, that you and I kind of talked a little bit before we started this video. This is not just representing the buy side. And I
Uh-huh.
think during my classes, I say anywhere from 15 to 20 times, it ain't about you, it's about the consumer.
Yeah.
It's about the buyer. The buyer chooses. You cannot refuse to, and the buyer chooses. But then we have, and this comes up, then we have the situation of the listing agents and the sellers, which is
Yeah.
another whole dynamic. And I am finding most of the people that are in my office and excuse me, in my classes are predominantly representing buyers. And that conversation to the seller is a challenging one for them. Don't you
Yes.
agree?
Yeah. And I've started to say to everyone, let me rephrase that. I believe we're still going to have big problems with this if we don't get the agents who primarily do listings. And
Mhm.
all of us do both sides. Some would do
Yes,
more
yes,
listings
yes,
than buy,
yes.
some do more buyers than listings. It's
Right,
very seldom 50-50. We know that. As
right.
managing brokers, we know you have a propensity for one side or the other usually. But here's the bottom line. If I'm a listing agent and I haven't prepared my seller for what's going on and for the fact that, let's be honest, most of the buyers do not have extra money at the closing
Right.
to write out a check and pay
Right.
for the buyer brokerage
Right.
compensation.
Right.
They are going to ask the seller to
Right.
pay it. One
Right.
way or the other, it's still going to happen the way it's been happening for the last 75 years.
Yes.
And the idea and the problem, and the managing brokers need to help with this. We know that there are all kinds of news media out there with
wrong
bad
information.
information.
Mhm.
And they're leading the consumers to believe that at some point in time, within the next couple of months, they will not have to pay any buyer broker compensation. And they believe that means they can now pocket
Yeah.
extra money on the
Right.
sale of their home.
Right. Right.
When we need listing agents to be able to explain to the sellers, that's not how this is going to work.
Mhm.
Because otherwise we are going to go through the
Horrible.
7 rings
Yeah.
of you know where for the
Right.
next 7 months.
Right.
If we can't get so that's why we're saying to everyone, it's not just learning on not just ABR, not just learning what to do with the buyers. They
Mhm.
also have to learn what to do with the sellers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the
One of the
managing
things-
brokers need to encourage their agents. And we encourage the managing brokers to come through the classes, and yet they're not.
They're
Because
not.
I'll do an ABR class, and then right afterwards, I get all these phone calls and emails from managing brokers who say, I had agents in your class, and now can you come in and do one in our office?
Of course. I have 4 of those booked
Yeah.
right now this
Yeah.
year. 4 of
Yeah.
them.
And now the problem is some of us are so totally booked at this moment in time that the answer is no. But
Right.
we can find you an instructor. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. We
Right.
can always find you a good ABR instructor
Right.
or whatever. But it would make sense for you to encourage your agents to come into the classes, but be there with them
Absolutely.
so that you know what we're saying and you can reinforce it and you
Right.
can move forward with it.
And ask clarification questions of our own.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. And that is, one of the things that it drives me personally crazy, because I think it probably drives both of us crazy, because we were true leaders. Not to diminish any managing broker. It's not easy being a broker of record.
No, it's not.
It's not
It's
easy
not.
running a real estate company. But this is a moment in time when the bar has to be raised, because
Yeah.
we no longer have a choice. But can you imagine if no one's told anybody in their offices, and on August 18th, all of a sudden the world has ended as they know it? And the other thing that has come up, in fact, and this was funny, I laughed at it, although I had not much more to say. But this guy said, what do you mean I have to call all those agents and find out what the concession may be? I said, yes, you do.
Or you do
Or-
it differently. You've got
Yes.
2 ways to do this.
Yes, go
The
for it.
the other way to do it is I explained to my buyer, we're going to look at every house that fits your needs.
That's
I have a
correct.
buyer rep agreement with my buyer. My buyer is going to use the sales contract to ask the seller to pay
That's
it.
correct.
But somewhere along the line, my buyer's got to know, and I'm
Mhm.
going to try to find out. What really scares me about this is you are going to try to, as a list. So let's talk about this with the managing brokers. If your people in your office take a lot of listings, and they are getting a lot of phone calls from buyer agents about the compensation when it's no longer published in the MLS.
Mhm.
You've got agents, not you maybe personally, but we know they're out there. Listing agents who haven't returned a phone call in a year and a half.
Absolutely comes up every time.
What are you going to postpone showing the property, waiting for a listing agent? And let's talk about unethical Erica or unethical Eric, who have their own buyer,
Mhm.
so they don't call you back to tell you what the compensation is going to be. And then by the time, then the next thing you see, it's reported sold in the MLS.
That's
Now,
correct.
I wish I could tell you that there weren't those kinds of people in our business. Well, I'd be a fool to say that, because we
Yeah.
know they're out there. So we've got to figure out a way to get our agents to understand we got to get out there. We got to show the properties. And if you're taking listings in your office, then you need to have
the
policy
conversation.
changes, and you need to have your office policy manual. I'm going to say this, and I very seldom say this. I guarantee you that you're going to have things in your policy manual that should not be there after August 17th.
Mhm. I just was doing that with a student, a guy I've known for a bunch of years.
Yeah.
He's a managing broker for a relatively new company. And I talked about it a lot in class. And I just had a meeting with him last week, just looking at his independent contractor agreement, looking at his
Yeah.
policy manual, and saying, okay, here's where things need to change. and he understood that. The other thing that one of the things that I know we talk state to state, we all not understand California, and I think I've sent this to you, but I'll send it to you again. California created a document. It's a very interesting document because it's basically, they call it the ABCD. Don't even anticipated buyer compensation disclosure. And what the document is doing, Lynn, that I personally think is awesome, is it has agent initial, buyer initial, property address, compensation being offered, if any, and the source of the information on the compensation. The buyer initials it. And then that buyer, then you have a document in your file that indicates you've had the conversation with the buyer,
Yes.
that they may be responsible for a compensation to you if we look at this property and it doesn't offer anything. But to me, because my brain always goes to risk management, to me, I'm saying to myself, if you now have a document that you can substantiate that there was a conversation with your buyer about what the offer of compensation was from that seller, if any, that the buyer chose whether or not to see that property.
Absolutely right. And
Huge,
I've been
huge.
saying, I've always said to everyone that we need to get a lot of things in writing. And if that in writing means just an email and a response to an
I
email,
agree.
that's
I
fine.
agree. I
But
agree.
I see a lot of problems with what's till we all get used to it,
Yeah.
especially in the states that have not been using
Right.
buyer representation agreements up until now.
Right.
I keep saying to everybody, the doomsday sayers that we've got out there who are going, the buyers are never going to sign the buyer representation agreements. My compensation's going to, if I'm a buyer agent, is going to keep my buyer from being able to buy a house. I am telling you that these people are just, and I say to them, aren't you getting paid now?
Right.
Yeah, I'm getting paid now. So your compensation is keeping the buyers from getting the house. No, but it will after August. I said, what, there's a magic thing that's going to happen on August 19th, other than no offer of compensation in the MLS. I said, but you're not understanding that still. We've got to be able to explain all of this to the sellers.
Well, the other
It's
thing,
not just the buy side that needs
right.
it, and the
Oh,
managing brokers
absolutely.
need to. And I'm going to throw something else out there. The agents don't know what to say.
Right.
And we can help them all we can help them with that for 2 days.
Absolutely.
I know you do it, Jenny. I do it.
Absolutely.
I'll role play in the front of the classroom with
Me too.
somebody.
Always, always do.
And I'll say, this is what it might sound like, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really at the brokerage level that you need to have these rehearsals, if you want to call them that. Nobody likes the word role play. The minute you say role play, everybody goes, I'm not going to role play. You know what? Maybe we ought to start saying, wouldn't it be better to practice on somebody in your office about getting a buyer rep agreement signed rather than practice on a living, breathing
human being with money.
buyer
Yes.
with
Yes.
money?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they're not going to get it right away.
My favorite thing when I bring up role play is how many heads go like this.
Yep.
Don't
Exactly.
call on me. Don't call on me.
I don't want to do that. It's like, no, but you're doing it every single time you sit in front of a buyer.
Right.
And until the agents wrap their heads around this, and the only people who can help them do it on a daily basis are the managing brokers. And I understand, I'm going to piggyback on what you said, Jenny. We know that many of the as a matter of fact, the stats that I saw, and I'll send them to you, was that 81% of the offices in NAR are one office companies, and on average, they sponsor 3 agents. We sometimes think that, because I'm in a major metropolitan area, so we sometimes think that the business is run by and is inundated with these big brokerage companies. That is not the case.
Not the case at all.
And not the case at all. And that means, as you said, a lot of our managing brokers are still listing and selling.
Right. Right.
But you still can't,
No.
You still have to train your agents.
You have a responsibility. And
Yeah.
I always love when people said, well, I'm just busy. Excuse me?
Yeah.
You know, when I had an office of 250 agents, a staff of 9 as a single mom, and I still sold houses.
Yeah.
I used to laugh at that. Okay, share your calendar with me. Let's compare.
Yeah.
Because don't tell me that you're too busy, even if
Yeah.
it's, and I told them, this is truly what I did every week, for the most part, every week. I had a contracts class, 1 page at a time, and everybody was invited so that everybody knew exactly what we were doing and how we were doing it. The other thing that came up with with somebody saying in a class, and this one really got me. Agent said, well, there's just so much paperwork. This is just so much now, California, of course. This is just a lot. And I said, I need to ask you a question. I said, and please understand, I'm not disparaging you, but I need to ask this very simple question. Assumptively, you're going to receive a percentage of a closed transaction price, right? Yeah. Does that number have a comma and some zeros in it? Well, yeah. I said, so you're going to tell me that dealing with this much paperwork against what your actual compensation is too difficult. I have a problem with that.
I do too.
And she
I do
looked
too.
at me and she shook her head and she got it, because I had another guy, and a different guy said, I have to do all this stuff. I'm going to ask for more. I said, go right ahead.
Mhm.
If you can get more, get more. But the point is very simple. It isn't about us. It's our job to do this. And I'm going to take you to the seller side. And this is a place that they all argue with me, because I still sell houses occasionally, not as much as I did. But I had a listing, and I tell them this exactly, Lynn. This was because my business is 100% referral. It was a very, very close family friend to my dad and myself. Her dad was my dad's closest friend. She inherited the home, had to sell the home, doesn't matter why. And so I said, I want to tell you exactly what I did. And I sat and I said, remember, family friend. This is not a person I never knew before. And I said, please understand, this is my compensation. This is what I expect to get paid. Now I need you to let me know how much you would like to pay the agent bringing the buyer to the transaction. And I said, what I've done for you is I have brought you copies of the listings. And fast forward, I have spoken to the listing agents. I've asked if there were any concessions being offered. So here are all the facts and what other sellers have offered or are offering based on those facts. What would you like to offer?
Yeah.
And then I stopped talking. She made the decision.
That's exactly what we need to be doing. And what I have found, back to that company policy comment I made earlier and you piggybacked on, was that I have seen in too many company policies where the brokerage has said, this is what we pay out to the cooperating broker on all of you can't do that.
No.
It's part of what got us in all of this trouble in the first place, was with the seller saying, when that's your policy, then I have no room to negotiate that.
One of the things,
yeah, it's a problem.
I pulled this from the testimony, and one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit stated, and it's in writing, and I have it on a slide that I use sometimes. And it basically said, when I sat down with the listing agent asked me how much I wanted to pay, and had 7, 8, 9, or 10 there, and had already pre-filled in a number.
Yeah.
And her words were, it looked to me as I didn't have an opportunity to negotiate.
That's right. And then the other problem that we've seen managing brokers is that, and it came up in some of the lawsuits as well, the Code of Ethics has said we were supposed to be disclosing to the seller how much was being paid out to the cooperating broker, to the buyer, to the brokerage who brought in the buyer. Let's not get about who it is. We were supposed to be telling the seller what that number was. And I can tell you for a fact that I have seen way too many over the last 10 years, and that's how long that's been in the code, listing agreements that did not have the breakdown. All that was in there was the big number, not how we were. Now, the fact that we should have been letting the seller choose how much the back half of that number was, does that make sense, is a whole different issue. But they weren't even disclosing it and then we all got in trouble, and somehow or another NAR got blamed for that. NAR wasn't doing that.
No, that was the thing that upset me the most. That upset me the most when you get on national, because I watch national television in the morning. I live, and I'm, from now on, this is going to happen. Well, NAR is going to have to change, but NAR doesn't do that. And I don't know, but you know what that said to me? It showed to me the unbelievable lack of understanding of how the industry as a whole works. And
whose fault is that? That's what I keep saying to everybody. And whose fault is that? So I was doing an SRS class just yesterday. And in the SRS class, we show some of the statistics and the responses to the NAR, when NAR hires a company. And I keep telling everybody that NAR is not doing that profile of home buyers and sellers survey. No, they hire a company to do it. So there's no, and everybody goes, well, because they slant the questions. That's not what they're doing. So they asked the sellers, what were the most important things you were looking for in your agent? What were the most important things? And negotiating was like fourth or fifth. And my agents all went, that is awful. How can they not understand that negotiating is one of the most important things we do for them? And I stood at the front of the room, and now this was like towards the second half, the afternoon of the second day, okay, where we talk about negotiating in SRS. And I just sat up there because I use a high top stool, because then I feel like I'm sitting at a bar and it makes me feel better or whatever. But so I'm just sitting there, and the other half of the class went, oh, she's not going to like this answer. And I said, you know why they did that? Because we don't tell them what we do.
That's correct. We don't tell
We
them.
do it all. So what I've been telling everybody, and managing brokers, you might want to reinforce this with your agents. I've been telling them both in both classes, I want you, for the next 3 buyers you have and the next 3 listings you have, to literally everything you do for them in the sale or purchase of their home, and how much time you're spending doing. Because if somebody said to you, why should you get all this money? I challenge that most of your agents have no answer for that. They don't even have a value proposition to give to the buyers.
No.
And so, but they need to quantify it as
Right.
well.
Right.
Your agents are spending a boatload of time. I had to
Right.
clean that up for very quickly, but a boatload of time doing a lot of things that we never tell the clients that we're doing. There's nothing wrong with that, except they're now questioning our value.
Well, that's
and why they need us.
I do something similar. And now they have, of course, the 179 thing and the 180, 105 more things, which are helpful. But what I've said to folks, if you don't know what you've done from the moment you meet that person and the day it closes, write down, and pretend you're an attorney, every 15 minutes, write down what you've done for that client in that period of time. And then take a look at exactly what you've done. That creates and proves what you were doing throughout the entire process. But I have been preaching this for decades, Lynn.
Me too. But they're not doing it.
No, they're not.
They leave our classes, and if there's no reinforcement of what we've tried to help you help them with, and now I'm speaking right to my fellow managing brokers, because I'm one too.
I am too.
If there is no follow-up, no accountability, and I know they're independent contractors, don't even sit there and start muttering at this screen that they're independent contractors and I can't tell them what to do. You know what? Then they can go, I managed a lot of people. And when I was interviewing people and I said, this is our training program, this is what we do, and they gave me any pushback about any of it,
you didn't hire them.
Literally said to them, then this is not going to work for us. Because my job is to help make you successful. And I can't do that if you're going to not show up. If you're going to tell me I'm an independent contractor and I don't have to do what you tell me to do, then I'm sorry, you're going to need to go independent contract someplace else.
And that's not to diminish independent contractor status.
I'm not at all. I want them to be. Yeah.
I did exactly the same thing. Yeah. I did exactly the same thing. And if you can't, well, okay, then this is not the right fit.
Right.
This is our culture is very training focused. And that's how the people in my office have been successful. And if that's what you want to have, this is what we do to help you get there. But if that's not something you're willing to do, then we're just not the right fit for you.
That's right. We're not the right fit. Not every agent belongs in every brokerage company. No. We all know that. That's agents change offices. And I know a lot of managing brokers want to always say they changed offices because the other managing broker dangled a bigger carrot in front of them. It is seldom the money, guys.
No.
It is not the money. It's no different than the listing agents who are all going, well, the seller always sells their house to the buyer who pays them the most money. No, they do not.
No, they do not.
They do not.
And they don't always choose the cash ones. I have a deal.
That's right.
The guy that my buyer should have bought, and he failed at not buying it. And they had cash offers, and the seller didn't accept them. They went with it. Some sellers, and this particular seller, I want to say it was either a VA or something along those lines. That seller chose that consumer to be in their home. And so it's don't blanket everything as a statement,
That's
because
right.
that's not the case.
It's,
And let's go back to the managing brokers, because what happened in my brain right away is because I was a recruiter a ton, and I enjoyed the process. And I will share with you, and I'm sure you're the same way, Lynn. There was a certain amount of joy that I had when I brought a baby into the industry and helped them succeed,
yeah,
because they went through the mentor program I had, the training programs I had, all those things. That was tremendous joy for me.
yeah,
But we all know, in fact, I knew a guy out of Texas, and he had a huge company, and this is a bunch of years ago. He said, "Yeah, I hire anybody can fog a mirror. I don't care.
that's right.
I hold them accountable. Doesn't matter if they don't do it. There's certain levels of criterion they have to meet to get certain benefits, and if they don't do it, they go away. But I'd rather." So he hires anyone that
I know.
crosses the threshold.
And what I say to all the managing brokers when I teach broker management, because we have a special 12-hour broker management course that we do here in Illinois, and I do it in a lot of states for different ways. Your brokerage company's reputation is only as good as the lowest level of service being given by your agents. So I want you, and what I say to the managing brokers is, and now don't get me wrong here, I am 100% on the side of we need to stay independent contractors. Don't get me wrong.
I agree.
But let me tell you what I say. If you were paying their salary, if you were paying their taxes, if they were not independent contractors and you hired them, how many of the people in your office would still be in your office?
Yeah.
And I say to everybody, don't answer that question.
No.
Because I'm going to tell you, my guess is it's maybe a third. Because I don't think people would keep hiring anybody who can fog a mirror. Although I will tell you, I had a managing broker who said, "Oh, no, I don't do it that way. I flip a coin in the air. If they grab the coin out of the air, then I hire them because I know they want the money." I went, "I think that's worse than fogging a
Oh my
mirror,
gosh.
if that's your mentality." But the bottom line is, there are a lot of managing brokers, Jenny, I agree with you. They will hire anybody without ever even vetting them at all.
And I
And
say
and
something
then not train them. And don't
exactly.
let me forget to talk about the article. Can I do it now about?
Yeah. Well, let me
There's
just
an
jump in
article in one of
I
our,
want to jump
go
in one
ahead.
second. I say something similar, and when I'm teaching, I say
Okay.
this. An office is only as good as the worst agent they
That's right.
have, similar to you. But the other thing I've shared with managing brokers specifically, I've said, how many agents do you have? They talk to me, they come to me on recruiting, because I do a lot of recruiting consulting. And I say, "How many agents do you have?" "Well, I have 100. "Okay, how many of them are producing?"
Yeah.
10. I said, "Then you have 10 agents."
You have 10 agents.
And that's back to the training to the managing broker.
Right.
It's about how do again, if the goal is to always be the rainmaker, that's okay. But if the goal is to grow the agents up so you don't have to be the rainmaker, and you can be the managing broker and really create something wonderful in the industry, then you need to get the right people on
Or
box.
hire a
Yeah.
trainer,
Yes.
hire a managing broker. I have a good friend of mine, he has 2 offices. He is an amazing agent. He's an amazing managing broker, but he and I just had this conversation a couple of weeks, and you know him. We're not going to say who it is, but you've met him. And I said to him, "You're going to have to make a choice here, dude, because you are at a point where either your agents are going to suffer for all of your business you're doing, or your business is going to suffer because you got to take care of your agents.
One or
You
the
are
other.
at a point where you need a trainer,
Mhm.
or you need an assistant manager, or you need to just turn over the managing broker side of this to somebody else, and you need to go list and sell houses.
That's
You still
right.
own your company. You can still do whatever, and you know what? We're control freaks.
Oh,
I know
yes.
we are.
Yeah.
I'm one of you. I didn't want to give it up either.
Yeah.
We want to do what? We want to do it all. It's funny
Yeah.
because Ginny and I were just talking about that in a different vein now that we're trainers.
The other
Instead
Ginny.
of, it's hard to give up. It's hard to
It's
give it up.
very hard. And yet at the same time, again, when we manage our time well, we remember we're running a company, and we have an
Yes,
obligation to that company.
for the company.
And I think of my own career, which I loved all my years in brokerage management.
So did I.
Just knowing I was responsible for everybody, including the people who owned my company,
Yeah.
that inspired me to do more and better. Well, you were going to mention something. Was it on the code or was something else?
No, there was an article just the last week or so that on one of the news reporting services in the real estate space, and I subscribed to 3 or 4 of them, so I was on. But it was this article that apparently they had the writer had interviewed, talked with a bunch of managing brokers about what they thought the problems were. And as you're reading this article, they were talking about pre-licensing. And the managing brokers were saying that the problem is that what they're taught in pre-licensing does not prepare the agents for boots on the ground handling of the largest single investment that most consumers make in their entire life. I do not disagree with their theory.
Yep.
I agree with that 100%. I do know that Arello, the Association of Real Estate License Law Officials, have had a couple of meetings on this, and they too know that the direction and some of the stuff that's taught in pre-licensing needs to change. I hope everybody understands, first of all, before I get into what I really wanted to talk about, is that's going to take many, many years. Does that make sense to change all of that?
Yes.
You got to change exams. You got to change. You've got schools that teach pre-licensing who have never sold real estate. So if you're going to transition to more boots on the ground, practical application of the real estate business, you're going to get a pushback from some of these schools. So you got a lot of reasons why this is going to take time, but that's not, my big point is this. I was furious. I'm reading this going, you are all managing brokers and you are all saying, you know, that they are not getting trained in pre-licensing. How is this not your responsibility?
Your job.
If you know they're not getting it, then when you hire them, you've got to what? You've got to give it to them.
You've got to
train them. You can't hire them and then go, it's not my fault.
Oh, come on, Lynn. You and I were both brand new. We were both new and we both did fine.
Yeah.
I was very successful from the start, but everybody was new once.
Yes.
And what created the ones that were successful, like we have been in our careers and still are in our careers. And those who said, oh, this is what I have to do, let me just go do it. Versus, well, it's easy and I just can show up. I had a guy wanted to come to work for me when I was managing Rancho Santa Fe. He said, well, I want to come to work here just because I know I only have to sell 2 houses and make plenty of money.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not going to work. And it's just not.
No,
but you're right. It is the managing broker's responsibility. That's the job of the person who hires the person.
That's right.
And the baby agents don't know also. I can't tell you how many times when I was interviewing somebody, and they said, well, the other person offered me a job. My brain said, because my brain is different from my mouth sometimes. And my brain said, everybody will. My mouth said, I appreciate that, but that is not always the right thing, because in my case, I have to make sure whomever I hire is the right fit for my office. So,
and for many years, I did teach 15 of the pre-licensing hours. I don't do it anymore, mainly because I'm not the right person to teach something that has a test attached to it, because I can't stay on topic. Okay, so I totally know that, and I'm much better suited for post-licensing training because you holler squirrel and we're chasing it. Okay, so and my students like that, because that way we talk about stuff they want. So I don't do it anymore. But when I did, I gave the agents in the class, the students in the class, a list of questions that they should be asking their potential managing brokers if they were going to interview at real estate offices for a job. I gave them the list of questions before. And I've asked, because I do the orientation class for a couple of our associations here in Illinois, and I've asked them, did your pre-license instructors do anything to prepare you to interview? And every one of them tells me no. And arguably, it's not their job. I agree with them. Their job is to get them to pass that exam, not prepare them to be stupid, but it is still not their job to prepare them to choose the right brokerage company. And to know what to look for when they go to work for a brokerage company. But
again, let's go.
But it should be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But let's counter that too, because when I interviewed, I had a script.
So did I.
And I used specific questions. And as I've said to folks, in fact, I was honored to be able to do the rewrite of the recruiting class for CRB. Because I basically created or wrote what I did. And I could tell within the first 5 to 7 questions whether or not the person was going to be a fit for what I was creating for the culture. And I'm a believer in scripts, and you're right. They should
I
have
am
a
too.
script that
Yep.
basically says, here are the questions you need to have. Ask, answer, because that way you have the ability to know, is this the right place for me? So, well, I think, my friend, I think we've covered most of the things that frustrate us. Not all, but quite a
Well,
few.
our goal here was to try to
Yeah.
just have a conversation, if you will,
Yeah.
with our fellow managing
Right.
brokers to get all of us more involved in this new normal that we're dealing with.
And the
But before we
frustration.
move on, I do want to throw one other thing out here because you mentioned it, and
Go
that's
for it.
CRB.
Yeah, please. The code.
CRB.
Oh, CRB.
CRB, this
Mhm.
Certified Residential Brokerage
Mhm,
class.
mhm, mhm.
Those classes have been around for a long time.
I've had my
Ginny
CRB.
is one of the people who was involved in updating some of them. I'm involved in them. We need to get more of our managing brokers to, and maybe we need to start talking about this more with our associations as well. We
Mhm.
need to get those courses out there to you guys,
I
because
agree.
there are courses that you can take to help you be a better
Better.
managing
Mhm.
broker.
And
And it's a series of what? There's got to be 8 or 10 different
yeah,
courses that we have
yeah,
available
yeah. And
in
I
every aspect of the broker
how to
management.
run a brokerage successfully. And that's what I did when I
Yeah,
started managing. I started managing in 1989, but then I went to a large franchise multi-office company in 1990, and that's when I started CRB.
yeah,
And my
me
whole
too.
philosophy was, if I was going to do this, I wanted to be the very best at it I could be. And there's no question that so much of what I've done, and I was pretty successful at creating profitable offices because I understood what to look for. And it goes back to, well, I have 100 agents, but 10 of them make money, 10 of them are doing business. Then you only have that. And that part of
Yeah,
that came from CRB for me.
yes,
I was honored
yes.
to do the recruiting class. I was honored to do the profitability class. I'm teaching that coming up because that's another place that managing brokers don't, it's not, don't always look at those issues, whether it's making a decision on an expansion or a different something that costs money without
Yep.
allowing for that based on the production of the agents. And when you talk about going back to managing broker, I get passionate about this, Lynn, so thank you. I think um, when we go back to the managing broker piece, when I was in management for this large office, I had an obligation every year to predict what I believed the agent
Me
population in my
too.
office was capable of doing,
Yeah,
and then the budget was based on what I believed
that's
they
right.
could do.
That's right.
I then had an obligation to help the agents do the thing I thought they could do to
Absolutely.
get to the bottom line. But I go back all the way to the early 90s. I started coaching agents then, and there was a simple formula. How many houses do you want? How much money do you want to make? How many houses do you need to sell? And at what commission rate? And to be able to make the money you want to
Uh-huh.
make. And I was doing that in the 90s, long
Eh,
before there was real estate coaching as we know today.
That's right. And
And
I did the same thing. And I did that, what you just mentioned, for NAR
yeah,
in the financial wellness section.
yes,
We talk
yes.
about, we did the whole, you've got to sit your agents down sometime in September, October, or November
Mhm,
of this year, and
mhm.
they need to do their business plan
And
for
you want,
next year. And
and
then
then
when
your
they do
business,
their business plan,
that's
you'll
right.
know what
That's right.
your office is going to do.
Correct,
And
correct.
I'm going to suggest that I know, because I hear from the agents when I do that class, business planning class, I say to the agents, this, if you've already done this with your managing broker, all we're doing is putting the gravy on the mashed potatoes or the frosting on the cupcake or whatever I say. And most of them say, oh, I've never done this. Been in
Yeah,
the business 10 years. And
yeah.
my managing broker has never sat down with me and done what we are doing right now. And that is, I
And
don't even know where to start with that.
it's
How
all
do
in
how do
one
you
break.
know what your office is going to do if you don't know what your agents are going to do?
How do you plan? How do you know?
But then
And I was hired by a company.
you plan then by hiring anybody who can fog a mirror and
Correct.
praying that they get to sell a house.
And I was hired by a multi-office company
Me
in
too.
the San Antonio area. And he told me what he wanted to do, and he told me the why behind it. And he was very similar to what I was saying. How many people do you have, and how many are producing? And it came, you know what it came down to, the bottom line? His managers were not teaching their agents how to be successful.
Right.
So that ultimately he hired me for one purpose, but I ended up helping him in this direction because that's really where the problem was lying, is that and we've talked about this managing broker video. The obligation when you are going into a brokerage, it's not easy. And don't assume you're just going to make magical money from the agents that you hire, because it doesn't work that way.
No.
It comes down to you being the leader and leaders. One of my favorite things, and I put it in every leadership program I teach, or even when I do SWOT analysis facilitation, I have this slide there, and it says, if you think you're a leader and start walking and no one's behind you, you're just taking a walk.
That's
And
right.
if that's what it comes down to, it comes down more than ever before today to leadership.
That's right.
And that's what, hopefully what we've done here, Lynn, you and I, has spoken or will speak to managing brokers.
I hope.
And I hope that they reach out to us to see how we can maybe help them turn that corner, because this is not going away. I'm
No.
not going to be 20 pounds lighter tomorrow morning. Dang it.
I'm not going to be
Uh,
20. I'm not going to be 20 years younger.
I'm not going to be 20 years younger. I'm not, none of that's going to happen.
None of that's going to happen.
This is reality, and we're in
Yeah.
the final countdown.
Yeah.
And and one of the things I show, and I'm sure you do as well, when I created a separate slide deck, I actually put in the deck, what was said about us in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Because I want the agents in the room that I'm teaching to understand, and that's for both sellers and buy sides, for
Yes.
listing agents
Agreed.
and buyers agents, to see what was said about us. And if that doesn't make you want to change,
Right.
then I don't think any of us can help
Right.
anybody.
Right.
So,
Right.
but one final thing, and we didn't really spend time on the code, but that the code has changed, and it's
Yeah.
changed profoundly. And I think we owe it to ourselves to have just a fragment of time on the code. Lynn, I'm going to defer to you.
Yeah, it is. I think we all need to prepare for the fact that over the next 18 months or so, I'm on professional standards at NAR.
Mhm.
We know that there are at least 7 articles of the code, at least, that are going to need to be tweaked, changed, whatever phrase you want to use. Do not expect that to happen necessarily at our upcoming meetings in November, because we don't even have a final acceptance of the settlement.
Mhm.
The DOJ hasn't weighed in on the and by the way, maybe that's something I should talk about for just briefly.
Mhm.
Just because the court has not approved the final settlement, just because the DOJ hasn't got done doing their thing with our settlement, because they're doing something, doesn't change the fact of what's going to happen in
That's
August.
correct.
And I think that may be what's causing part of these issues, is
Ah,
that we've got people going, yeah, but it's
no.
not been finalized. Yeah, but it's not. We're not talking about changing the settlement. Does that make sense? We're just talking
Absolutely.
about,
Absolutely.
are they going to accept it? By the way, you better hope they accept it. Does that, or we're going back to the drawing board here with
Right.
a
And
whole
I
lot
will
more
share
stuff.
with you, and I think I told you this, but I had a conversation with someone at NAR in the legal department. And basically, this was the conversation. And I'm not going to go into the conversation deeply, but the question I had is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
DOJ stop the thing. And everything that I'm reading is that the judge is favorably in favor of approving the settlement as
approving.
written.
Yeah.
And what I was told by this attorney, basically saying that if both the plaintiffs and the defendants agree that the settlement agreement is equitable and fair to both sides, the judge cannot not approve
Yeah.
it. That's what I was
Yeah.
told. The DOJ is a separate issue. I don't know, and I'm sure you did see the response from MLS PIN to the Department of Justice. It was
Yes.
incredibly well written. And so, at some level, some fight back has to happen, but I feel pretty positive that the settlement will be
I do
approved.
too.
That doesn't mean that there's not going to be something, because one of the things that the lead attorney for the plaintiffs in the court in the lawsuit stated, because we're all seeing this workarounds and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And he was quoted as saying, we are going to pay attention to everything. And if we find anyone is outside of what this agreement states, we're going to pursue it,
Yes.
that's pretty scary.
Yes.
And if that's not an impetus or an inspiration, if you will, to pay attention and change with the change, I don't know what else there can be.
Yeah, and that's a really good example, I think, of we're going to have to kind of wait and see. And we don't meet till November, and all of this might not happen till October or November. So don't expect to see a big change in the code of ethics for January 1st of this
I
year.
see. Okay.
I,
But
I
there are
think we're
some
going to have to
changes
work
that have
our way
already
through it.
happened.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
things that have already happened.
But here's the other thing that we could be here all day with this, couldn't we? But
No, we cannot.
but I know, but here's the other thing. If you've got any idea in your head as a managing broker, or you have agents in your office who are thinking they're going to be able to create workarounds, this no offer of compensation in the MLS, you need to get your arms around that, and you need to get them corralled, because you are responsible for them.
Absolutely.
And if
Broker
they're out there
supervision.
creating these workarounds, and we've got people doing it right now,
Mhm.
and all you're going to do is possibly create problems
For
for
yourself.
the settlement
And for the settlement and for yourself.
and for yourself.
Because there's a whole
Yes.
bunch of people that were not named and were not part of the settlement.
That's right.
And you know, even after the settlement, I'm not entirely sure that there's not going to be other shots being fired across the bow. I don't know what those are
Oh, if the
gonna look
DOJ
like.
has their way, there will be other shots
Oh, without
fired.
question.
They've
Without,
already shot the across our bow.
yes,
The DOJ has.
I agree.
When they responded to the no select case, the PIN
Yes,
case.
yes. But
Um,
again, I do believe that the no select pin attorneys wrote an incredibly
I do too.
well-written, very comprehensive, logical, rational reply that I believe has standing. And again, we need things of that kind because, you know, but who knows where it's going to go. Well, my friend, it's been always a joy to talk
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thank you. It
I
has been.
my one of my favorite things that happened recently is when we were in Washington in May, getting to hang out for 2.5 hours just talking was lovely because
That was one of the best lunches I've had in a long
ever
time.
had ever. And you know, we think the same way, we're of the same mind, we're both passionate about the why behind what we do. I'm honored that we get to do these kinds of things and you know, so
And thank you for including me in this, because this has been, this is what we do, and we care about, you guys as managing brokers.
totally
And
so.
I don't want to see our business fragmented to the point where we don't have the smaller brokerages and we don't
I don't
have you
either.
guys.
I don't
It is a
either.
great business for an entrepreneur, but that
Absolutely.
doesn't mean that you don't have responsibilities to the people you've brought on board.
No
So
question.
we just wanted to kind of remind you of that.
And
So,
that's a brilliant way to end. Lynn, my friend, I adore you, and I will see you in November. Obviously,
Yep.
let's stay in
see you in
touch.
Boston.
And yeah, in Boston. I'm booked. I'm ready to go.
Good.
So,
All ready to go.
all right, my friend, you take good
Okay.
care of yourself.
You too.
Okay.
You too. Bye, everybody. Let us know if
Bye.
you need anything.
Absolutely. Reach out. We're here for you.
Okay. Bye-bye.